Danielle Huthart is a Hong Kong-based graphic designer, and she's gonna tell us something very exciting about her collection.
Thanks, Alex. I'm Danielle, and I run a graphic design studio called White Space here in Hong Kong. So I think a lot of the work that we do speaks for itself on the website. So I'm actually going to talk about some of the work that some of you might not be familiar with that I worked on before I started White Space. Prior to moving back to Hong Kong, I worked on, I lived in New York, and in the summer of 2000, I was waiting for my job application to go through, and I was stranded in Brooklyn without a visa and without a job. And I was living there with my boyfriend at the time, and I just, across the street from where I lived, I went to a flea market and found all these vintage postcards that were very interesting to me. And I picked them up and figured, what could I do with these really amazing postcards? And when I brought them home and I put them out on the table, I discovered that they formed a very interesting map of the United States. And being from Hong Kong, I never really went on a road trip, and that's what I pretty much figured I would do with these cards. And that spawned a whole idea of this placation, this idea that I came up with. And when I mapped everything out, it pretty much formed a very interesting roadmap of the entire United States, stretching from New York all the way back to Miami, through North Dakota, and all these places that I'd never been to. And in my imagination, which is what I do as a graphic designer, I decided to put together this road trip and figured out a way to engage my friends as well as create a story that I thought would be interesting and share it with my friends. And the idea really came about when I put together these postcards and came up with a logo and a name called Placation, and decided to, how would I say it, brand it in such a way that would be interesting. And Placation really came about because of this idea that I couldn't go anywhere. I was stranded in New York, and through my imagination I had to come up with a way to kind of escape the 3 months that I was in New York City. And this is a picture of the UN that I actually visited that summer, and which is where the trip began. So as a designer, I'm very interested in this whole notion of imagination, creativity, and reality, trying to blur the relationship between the two. So with my boyfriend and I, we created this whole narrative of this fake trip that we decided to take. And we found vintage postcards and actually vintage post stamps from eBay. And we put together this entire trip in our imagination, and then wrote this entire narrative over the course of a month, and then sent it to all our friends. But before that, of course, we scanned everything and documented it, and then decided to send it to our friends. And we got these very curious calls and emails later on saying, "Oh, I didn't realize you went to North Dakota," or "I didn't realize you got pecked by a parrot at Disneyland," which was very interesting to us because people actually took it very seriously. And then the whole thing was documented, and we put it onto a website called Placation, which was made available to the public. And that was one of the most sort of interesting projects that I'd done in nearly 8 years ago. Which then led on to this idea that I really love collecting things as a designer. I think we're all obsessed with amassing or gathering things that are of interest to us. And this led to Premiere Issues, which around the time I again built a website and thought it would be interesting to archive this collection of magazines that I had acquired over the years since about 1995. It really began with Ray Gun, which at the time I was still in high school in California. And it was a really seminal magazine at the time, simply because David Carson took type and really mashed things up and really confused people with his idea of what graphic design was. And this was in 1995. And when I started gathering these magazines, I realized that the first the editor's statement is always very interesting when you read it, because everyone's always trying to create something new. And when you look at all these premiere issues, every message tends to be similar in the sense that they want to do something different, they want to change the world, they want to do something totally radical. These are two magazines that I actually worked on personally. V magazine, which premiered in 1999, and also MTV's Spanking New magazine, which is now defunct. They don't tend to last very long, some of these magazines. So this was a personal collection, and then, you know, over the time, a lot of people started to, I put this website together and asked people to contribute if they could. And these are some of the contributions that I got, which from a graphic design point of view, I think these magazine covers are very interesting, because it really speaks to the time in which they were created, such as Avant-Garde. This magazine in particular, Margiela, A magazine, gets the most inquiries. People always ask me where this magazine came from, if they can get a copy. They sometimes mistake me as being some kind of publisher or like authority on magazines, which I'm not. But these magazines really are now a real representative of the times in which they were created. And at the press room, actually, we're now exhibiting some of these magazines, which are on display, and we're having a cocktail party for everyone that wants to come by and have a drink on Thursday night. And again, this is a personal project that has spawned a real sort of interest out of something personal, which I think as a graphic designer, it's very important to do things that are not necessarily client driven, but that really come from the heart and are just out of, like, you know, personal curiosity. So I hope that if you guys have a chance to go by the press room, have a look, and thanks very much.
From the Netherlands. Hi, welcome.